Have another guest on the Tech Careers podcast today, and she started her career in help desk and IT support and moved to being a book author now. So she's a published author and also a course creator, and you might have already taken her course if you're in the AWS space. And she's also an AWS hero. So please join me in welcoming Hero.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Hiroko Nishimura, and currently I'm a technical author and technical instructor. And sometimes I'm a technical writer, more as a hobby these days than writing for other companies. But my main focus right now is introducing cloud computing and Amazon Web Services to people from very diverse technical backgrounds or no technical background at all. Yeah, so thanks for having me on.
Awesome, awesome. No, I really appreciate you, being on this podcast. So, just to give you a bit of context, how like I met Hero is I've taken your course back when I was in help desk. People recommend. I saw that there were a few revisions of it posted, right? Have you
There's
revised?
two, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
two.
yeah. So I think I've done the older version of it.
Okay.
But it was pretty good, I would say, especially because I was pretty new to certain concepts, and how with all these resources it can get overwhelming with different like courses, different YouTube or tech influencers that are around that are producing free content. A huge shout out to those people too. But then yours was like it was that really good pace. It's not too much information, but it was also like at the end I was like, okay, I can tell what AWS is. And the title is really good. Like it says AWS for non-engineers. So I know like customer success people at our company took it. I know a few of the sales people who don't typically have the engineering background took that course to just understand and get an idea of so yeah, huge shout out to you for creating that, and that's how I came to know about you. And then I think after a few months, Hero has had an initiative called AWS Newbies. I think it was called Cloud Newbies back then. I could be wrong. Uh, and yeah, I just reached out and I'm like, Hero, like, I think I would be a good fit because I got promoted to being a cloud engineer now. And, I'll be a good fit for this. And we can talk about how I moved from help desk to like the cloud engineering role. And that's how I think our first conversation happened.
Mhm.
And yeah, just looking back at that, it's been a journey for especially for you. Like I've seen that, I've seen you working in tech, but now you're like a trainer. You have, as you can see in Hero's background, she has a book that came out. We'll talk about that. We'll go a bit deep into it. But I want to know what was Hero like when she was, in her like teens, and was computers or networks or internet was something that she was interested in.
Yeah, so I'm from the dial-up era, and so I think we had our first computer for the family to use. It was a laptop. It was black and white, and it was the only one that connected to the internet via the dial-up tone. And I think we got that from someone. Someone gave it to us. I think when I was like in sixth grade or something like that. And pretty quickly, I think my parents bought us a laptop. But then there was no internet connection on that one. And I think starting around middle school, we got one that's color and can connect to the internet, which was a huge improvement. But like your parents can figure out when you're on the internet because the phone line is dead when you're on the internet. So it's not like you can just be connected 24/7 like we are right now. It's kind of like, you're like hiding, or I'm assuming it ate up a lot of like monies, when you're connected to the internet too.
Hmm.
So I started out, I think like Neopets and like Sailor Moon forums and stuff like that. And back then, liking anime and stuff like that wasn't cool. Right now, apparently, it's cool.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't cool. So the only place really to find people to talk about it or do anything about it was on the internet. And it also had to be like other weird little nerds on the internet who also happened to be on dial up and visiting like Sailor Moon forums or something, or Dragon Ball Z forums or something like that, you know? So it was kind of like a really interesting experience meeting people online because you weren't supposed to talk to anyone online. um, that's where all the pedophiles and bad people were, and your parents are like, never talk to anyone online. And obviously we did. So I still actually have friends from back then. So we grew up together and went through all of our awkward phases together on the internet. We were making like graphics and websites and going on lisaexplainsit all.com and, you know, going all crazy for iframes when that was a craze and all
Hmm.
crazy for divs when that was a craze. And so it's kind of been really interesting seeing where we've ended up. I think we were all Asian, like first, second generation um, immigrants, and we just had this completely different world from what our parents lived through. And we also had like interests that were not cool, so we had to like hide in the internet to find friends. But I think majority of us, even though we all had like different types of majors, like I was a special education major and my friend was like a math major. Only one person I think majored in computer science, and but we all somehow kind of ended up in tech at the end.
Mm,
Um, so that was kind of interesting. So I started coding, I think, when I was in sixth grade, but I didn't really know what coding even was. It was just kind of like a way for me to interact with my friends,
I
and we
see.
would share content or we would like write about things. And we were all into the blogging stuff when, blogging was also not cool. And it was not
Not
like this,
cool.
not cool and not like this commercialized like
Mm,
content kind of thing. It was really a diary online. Um, so I'm sure there's a lot of embarrassing things online from 20 years ago. But so yeah, that's kind of how I started on the internet. There wasn't my parents, like my dad used computers for work, but my mom recently started using how to use the computer so she can email her friends back in Japan. And now she's like a Google foo and can find any like anime or J drama video she wants to find somehow, and downloads a lot of like viruses on her computer. But um, yeah, so that I've been doing stuff like that, but I never really realized that it was, coding, or that it was a something that I could have as a career. And no one had really mentioned to me that, this was a career. So when I graduated high school, I was like, okay, that part of my life is over, and that was all fun. It was all hobbies. To me, it was kind of like playing baseball or something. And it's like, okay, now I'm in college now. I have to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So like I just stopped. And so I was
mm,
doing that for like, 6, 7 years straight, teaching myself how to code and stuff like that just for my hobby. And then
nice.
because in my mind it was a hobby and not something that you could actually work in,
Mm,
I just, I was like, I'm going to be a special ed teacher. So I stopped coding and didn't pick it back up until like 3, 4 years into my career in tech.
interesting. Yeah. So, you mentioned a great point about how things were not commercialized and were not considered cool, whereas now we have came into this era, and I think that kind of works with tech too. Like tech in general, like the advancements we see, we have this trend of people think it's not gonna last, or they have their doubts in early stages, and then you see it over the years and it takes over. Like I feel like that's happening with AI right now. And we can talk about AI too. I would love to know your thoughts, especially because I know. So you did your bachelor's not in computer science but in special ed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, how did that interest came to you? Like, how did you decide that? Okay, yeah. I think you mentioned you had one friend who picked computer science.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, what was the reasoning, and like what was going in your head when you made that decision to pick special ed?
So I think education or teaching was something that kind of got inputted and ingrained to me from my mom, because my mom was always like, even if you take time off to raise kids or something, you should have a career that you can jump right back into if you got divorced. And to her, that was really important because she felt like she didn't have any skills or like employable skills that she could just jump back into work. So she felt like that prevented her from, doing what she wanted to do. And so for her, it was really important that my sister and I both had some kind of skill that we can always lean into. And teaching back then was a very secure job. And so even when I was younger, I was always very good with kids. I was never good with people my own age, but I was good with adults and kids.
Mm.
So, and I helped raise my sister, and so she was like, you're really patient with younger kids, so maybe teaching would be really good for you. And um, growing up, like it was kind of drilled into me that I'm not good with math, I'm not good with science. I'm good with words, I'm good with like reading, writing, stuff like that, but not STEM. So it's like, well, and you're good with kids, so like, why don't you teach? And teaching is like a very reputable profession. And
Definitely.
I was volunteering at like autism summer camps when I was in high school, and that's kind of where I decided that maybe I'll make a pivot into special education. I was going to go in as general education, but last minute I switched to special education because I felt like maybe I could make a difference or do something there. And I grew up with a lot of friends and peers who had different types of disabilities. And I was like, well, if I can try and it might make a difference, maybe it's worth trying. And even if not, there's always general education to go back to because it's kind of more like a niche that you get like a certification on top of general education. So I can choose whichever one I decide to do later on.
Yep.
So I got my bachelor's and master's in special education, and then kind of decided that's not what I wanted to do. So then one of the biggest reasons was that I had brain surgery when I was a senior in college, and teaching is like an extremely like strenuous and stressful job,
Yes.
and special ed is like on top of that, and
Yep.
you're on your feet 10 hours a day, and then you really don't have any time off. And I wasn't really sure if that kind of like physical and mental workload was good for my recovery from my brain surgery. And also I became disabled myself with the brain injury that I sustained during the brain surgery, and I kind of like experienced firsthand how it is and what like the difficulties people go through and how the current education system may not be like what I was looking for in terms of providing the kind of help that I wanted to provide or kind of care that I wanted to provide. And I considered going like maybe the private school route instead of public school, because the public school curriculum is very like set in stone, and it's I kind of felt more like there's different things I could be doing, but it might be very difficult in the way that the general education and the special education curriculum is in the public school system. So I considered private school, and then I also was interested in maybe working at a nonprofit for like disability advocacy and stuff like that. So I moved to New York looking for that kind of job because I was like, hey, New York is where you go when you want a job. And, that's where all the HQs are if they're
Yep.
not in DC. So I went there, and one, they're not hiring. Two, if they are, it's like really, really low salary. And three, no one wants someone who is overqualified and underqualified at the same time. So I'm overqualified with a master's degree, but underqualified because I have like no experience in
Yep.
anything. And so I spent half a year looking for a job in that sector, probably applied to like 600 jobs and really didn't hear back from any. And I was about to like just give up and move back to Maryland when I like as like a last ditched effort, I was like, I have 1 week left. I applied to be a recruiter at a recruiting firm, and
Interesting.
I was like, any job is good, I'll take any job. I was like babysitting and tutoring and stuff to like pay my rent. And I was like, well, either I get a real job or I move back to Maryland and figure out what to do. And they called me in, which was like one of the first places to call me back. And they're like, well, we already filled the recruiter position, but we have a IT help desk engineer position open with one of our clients.
Hmm.
And they are looking for a bilingual IT help desk engineer. And they're like, we understand you don't have any IT experience, but if you're willing to learn, we can teach you IT skills, but we can't teach language skills. So we'd like to basically, buy your language skills if you're willing to learn IT. And back then, like working in IT was not anything I'd ever imagined myself doing. It's like it wasn't even in the deck of cards. I
Yeah,
never even considered it because it was like to me the same thing as becoming like an actress or something. It's like completely out of
I
my
see.
realm. So I was like, what? But I didn't have a job, and this was a job,
Yeah.
and when you're making $0, $14 an hour sounded like a lot of money. So I was like, sold, and it was they had that 3 month kind of like a temp period where you kind of see if you guys are matched, and either side can say never mind at the end of 3 months and leave, or I would be like filled into like that full-time position and become a permanent employee. So I figured, I have 3 months to figure it out. And if I didn't like it or if it didn't work out, I'll just quit and move back to Maryland. And so that's how my really random foray into tech happened, just because I
Nice.
applied to be a recruiter and I didn't have a job.
Yeah, no, that is really interesting because one of the things that I say is, it's certain times it's just luck that plays out. It's one person who is willing to take the chance,
Mhm.
and those people saw that okay, we can take the bilingualism skill, and IT is something that we can teach in house, and we'll be fine. So that's exactly not exactly, but to some extent is what has happened in most of the cases and most of the people's stories that I've talked to. Like the first opportunity is always by, there's certain play with luck, and you obviously you created the opportunity by applying to the recruiter position, but then there is always that chance that you have to take, and no, that's beautiful. Like I didn't know the backstory of how you got the first role in IT, but that is really interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting because looking back, it was a pretty terrible role in terms of like the salary,
Could
and
imagine.
it's in Midtown, and when I was switching jobs, I found out that I was like severely underpaid because I didn't need a visa. Because if they're offering a visa, work visa, they have to pay you the same amount of money as the average, or because they have to justify
Whatever
giving you
is
a
in the
visa.
laws, or yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But because I'm a permanent resident at that time, I didn't need a visa. So they could pay me whatever the heck they wanted above the minimum wage. And I was like, wow, that's pretty like douchey, but it got me in tech, and I'm not
Yeah,
mad about it, I guess. Is the conclusion.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think I didn't even realize that until like I was approached by some external company. Even after my like promotion to cloud engineer, I didn't realize I was being underpaid because for
Hmm.
me, like the same approach you had, coming from $0 to $14 an hour is definitely,
14
you know,
more.
yeah,
Yeah.
14 more per hour. For me, it was like, okay, I was earning $10 at a gas station and was miserable to working in what I love and, earning whatever at that time. I think it was $18. So it's better
Very
than 10.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay, interesting. So, how long did you stay in that role? Because I think you said you were unhappy, and like, when did you realize you were being underpaid?
So I think being underpaid, I didn't really like realize, but I was kind of unhappy because I felt like I was there for I think 11 months, 10 or 11 months,
Hmm.
and I felt like I was kind of growing out of the role already. And what they they didn't really teach me much. I Googled most things on my own and I figured it out. And that was one of the big reasons why I decided to stay in tech is because I realized a lot of it is not what you come in with, but your ability to learn and your ability to problem solve. And I felt like I had that. So wherever I went, I felt like I could figure it out with the right tools. And so when I was looking up at where I could potentially go in the company, because it was like a consulting firm embedded into their client kind of situation, the client is hiring for that specific role. So I can't progress up unless someone quits. And
Uh,
um, at at these Japanese companies, it's very rare that people quit. It's like they stay for a very, very long time. It's not like the tech sector where you
yep.
change jobs every year to kind of thing. So the people who have been there for years and years and years. And I wasn't gonna sit there waiting for someone to quit. And around 10 or 11 months, I got a recruiter contacting me off LinkedIn going like, hey, are you interested in switching jobs? It seems like you've been there for a little bit. Maybe you're interested in switching jobs. And I was waiting for like that conversation because it was almost a year of, hey, change your salary or something, because I couldn't live on my salary. I was getting paid
Yep.
37K a year, and my rent was like 750 or 800 or something. And so to make ends meet, I was tutoring on the side 3 nights a week.
I see.
And that's how I was like paying my bills. So I was like, well, I can't live off this income. And even though I'm really thankful that I have a job and a new career that I never expected, and I like my job, I can't like keep on doing this forever. And so I was kind of hoping that they would bring up like a salary adjustment or something.
Yep.
But that conversation just never happened. And now, as someone who's been working for a while, I understand I was supposed to bring that up. But that was like my first job. We're immigrants, like we don't know, what we're supposed to be doing, or that I didn't even know you were allowed to like negotiate for your salary until my third job. And so I just thought you're just supposed to take what you get offered, and that's it. Because in Japan, that's what you do. You're offered a salary number, and everyone's offered the same number. I like the thought that someone else might be offered a different number to do the same job just because I'm not them and they're not me was like not a thing that ever like passed my mind. So I was like really shocked when I realized that with my second job, the person that got hired with me was doing the exact same job. We started on the same day doing the exact same job. She's paid more than I am. And I was like, wait, what?
Why? Yeah.
We literally got hired on the same day to do the same job. And because I think her recruiter negotiated and mine didn't, I just got what they told me and she got a little more than I did. And that's when I like realized, wait, you can like you can negotiate these things. Like, so at my second job, I was a IT support analyst. So the first job, it was a help desk, a first tier help desk position, doing printers. My Excel's not working. My Word is frozen. I
see.
can't print, stuff like that. And with my second job, it was more like proactive maintenance of like servers and networks and using SolarWinds, and it was all remote. We had little clients
I see.
all around Manhattan and stuff. And so it was more like, in a way, it was a lot cushier because it's not firefighting. You're trying to prevent the fire from happening. I say that like I did anything really important, but I just made sure the backups were running and the networks were not down. So that's like the first time I kind of figured out that there's like a lot of different things you can be doing. And
Yeah.
just because you get paid more doesn't mean you're working more.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And because the this like immigrant mindset is like you work harder, you get paid
Yep.
more, and to get paid more you have to work more, and if you want double you got to work double. But I was like, wait a second,
Exactly.
that's not how it works. And but the position turned kind of toxic pretty quickly. So after a year and a couple months, actually less than a year, I started kind of looking for another job. And after maybe like 14 months, I switched to a tech startup in Hudson Yards. And it's like back then it was a Google Alphabet startup with Sidewalk Labs. And so it's kind of like Alphabet, Sidewalk Labs, and then the company's intersection. And then right now, I think Sidewalk Labs folded. So I don't know where that positioning is now anymore. But it was the first time that I was working in like a startup kind of situation and learning about SaaS and cloud computing. And to me, it was like really exciting because we were generally working with legacy hardware and like server rooms. And like, you know, if you pull this network cable out, don't do it kind of
Yeah.
situation, or the printer's not working. I mean, the printer still didn't work, but we had a vendor who came in and fixed the printer when the printer stopped working, which was pretty cool. So it was like we were managing a lot of things in the cloud, and it was like really exciting to me because, as I mentioned earlier, you know, I started like my preteens with
Mm-hmm.
like the internet, and to me, it was kind of like my job was managing social media because
Interesting.
it was like the way that you can just use GUI to like manage things and administrate
Yep.
everything and stuff like that was very similar to, you know, using Facebook and
Yep.
spinning up a Facebook group, or, you know, doing some kind of like little stuff on social media where you're a little more into managing than just
Mm-hmm.
posting, which I've always like run groups, support groups for my brain injury and like stuff like that. So to me, it was very similar to that, using like G Suite. Now I guess it's called Google Workspace, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
those kind of Okta and stuff like that. To me, it was like
Nice.
it's kind of intuitive. So that's when I kind of started going, maybe this is something that I can do, like this side of things. And yeah, that's where I encountered Amazon Web Services for the first time, even though I had no idea what that meant. I just knew we used it, and it was an octatile.
Yeah. Nice. So that was back in 2016,
2017, end of
17.
2017, I think, is when I switched jobs, or 2016. Yeah,
Nice. And
it's all
yeah, I guess
fuzzy.
it also kind of came into that mental state where you were, always keen on learning on the job.
Hmm.
And this was another puzzle piece that
Hmm.
came, you know, at that time, like AWS. Okay, let's figure out, how. So, but you were always managing stuff in the GUI at that time, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I never actually did anything in AWS.
Interesting.
That's the big secret, is I've only really logged into Amazon Web Services and poked around. I can't do anything in AWS, but I can teach about it.
And you're a AWS hero. How?
I know, you know. The world works in mysterious ways,
Yeah.
but I can log
This
in.
this shows, it's about the understanding of a certain technology and not about, like, because there's a lot of fuss about, you need to be, like, how I've seen this a lot, like, passion is different. Like,
Mm,
you can still have a career in something and not be passionate about it because you might have the skills, right?
mm-hmm,
And that is one thing, like, I see a lot of debates about, that, especially in tech. I don't think you need to be passionate. It's just the learning, like the constant learning. You need to be used to that rather than calling it passion. If you're
mm-hmm.
passionate,
Great. Good for
great,
you.
good
Yeah,
for you. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
yeah, awesome, awesome. So you worked at that startup as, well, sorry, what was your title again? Like when you joined?
So it was a technical services engineer. So it's basically back to like tier one help desk, except now where I'm working with like a completely different set of technology than I was at
Yeah.
the first company. And one of the cool things about working at a startup, and it was very new back then, was that they're constantly like onboarding new technology and new stuff. And because it's a startup and they don't have enough people for anything, it was kind of like, if you want to take ownership and do something and take that part over, the people above you are like super happy that you're doing it, because that means that's one less thing they have to do that they don't want to be doing, that they get to focus on stuff they're interested in, which it was a completely different mentality from where I used to work, where they were people might be really guarding their
Yeah,
technology or
more.
their space because they're like, this is my job. And if you took this from me, my job is gone. So I'm not going to let you touch this. So that was like a really big mind shift for me. And the fact that everyone's like so excited about learning and doing new things that they're like willing to offload stuff that I might be able to do with my skill sets so that they can learn their own new stuff was like really cool. And that kind of helped me kind of keep on learning more and more and getting interested in different things and playing around with different things. So I think that kind of mentality and experience was a lot like it was extremely helpful in kind of that whole learning and then teaching people what you learn kind of thing. Because another thing about onboarding new technologies all the time is that you need to start writing like knowledge bases for your customers or yourselves, like your team or like people in other departments, because constantly there's like new software that they need to learn how to use, which means like you have to keep on writing these things to people who aren't necessarily engineers or have IT backgrounds, and for everyone to be able to understand, because the more coherently you write this for anyone to understand, less tickets come in,
Mm,
so which means less work I have to
yeah.
do explaining the same thing over and over again. So it really incentivizes you to start making really good documentation. And one another reason why I was really into making documentation is because with my brain injury, I had really bad like short-term memory. So I couldn't take for granted that whatever I figured out today, I'll
Yeah.
remember enough next week to do the same thing again. So I was writing like really, really detailed documentation for myself since the beginning, and that kind of like went into this job where my manager wanted me to write documentations and start like a company wide knowledge base with us, because he was like, hey, you write pretty good documentation. Do you want to like take ownership of this and start writing more and more documentations to help with our ticket triages? And like, I didn't see it then, but now I see like a linear line between, me trying to help myself and then that being seen by my manager. And then I started helping my team and the company. And then now, I'm a technical writer. So it was kind of like a really interesting like trajectory of like a mad
Hmm.
thing where I was just trying to help my brain, figure things out. And in the end, now I'm helping like people all around the world do the same thing. So it's pretty
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think. Uh, yeah. And also, like going back to your point about startups and like smaller teams, I get that. Like with bigger teams and organizations, you're more siloed and like
Hmm.
there's there are like set boundaries, like walls that, hey, this is your job and you're gonna do that. Whereas in startups, you wear multiple hats, or at least you have the opportunity to wear multiple hats, and I think that just empowers you to do something that might be more interesting
Hmm.
at the given time. And you're like, okay, hey, I want to take the ownership of I don't know, implementing IAC on AWS. That was the case with me, and I kind of missed that. To be honest. Um, Interesting. So I guess with your learning journey and your picking up things that were interesting to you and like taking on the projects in this smaller startup, I guess led to the promotion, right? You had a promotion at that space, right, where you were made sysadmin.
Yeah, that came pretty late in the game. I was only a sysadmin for half a year before I quit, and that was like a
Hmm.
really like tooth and nails kind of thing where I really had to fight for 2 years. Um, so one of the components in me trying to like justify that was the getting the AWS certification,
I
being
see.
like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm leveling up. So maybe my salary should also level up. And
Hmm.
maybe my job description should change because I can do a lot more, a lot of different things now that I wasn't doing in the beginning, obviously. And for me to have the same salary as 2 years ago and have the same job description doesn't serve anyone, not you or me. So, but that took like 2 years for it to happen. And um, by then I was like kind of disillusioned with the whole working in corporate thing and fighting and being the
Mm.
only woman on my team for like the 3-4 years that I was there. And so I already the LinkedIn learning courses and stuff were taking off. So I was like, I'm gonna try this content creation thing for a
Mm.
while and see what happens. Um yeah, so the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification exam was really new when
Mhm.
I considered taking it. And so I that was one of the things that I was like, okay, you know what, AWS seems like the thing, and the company is trying to migrate to AWS, all the infrastructure to AWS. So if I could get myself in here, that'll help my career and that'll help me get into like maybe a cloud engineer or like a
Mhm.
solutions architect or something that's more something that I thought would be more exciting day to day. Actually, I mean, IT help desk is very exciting day to day, but not really in the way that you want it to be exciting.
Yes.
Um, it's very adrenaline like
Mhm.
when there's a lot of red stuff or you
Yes.
get phone calls, but that wasn't the kind of vibe that I was going for with excitement.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I tried getting that certification, I think like a year or so into my job at that company. And that's when I was like, I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Mm.
And all the courses and all the blogs and resources I was reading, I like just could not even get past like the service names,
I see.
much less like, learning the material.
Mhm.
And it was really discouraging for me because the exam was marketed to be for beginners,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
even in tech. And right now I think a lot of like lawyers are taking, accountants, graphic designers, like
Yes.
anyone who wants to touch AWS or who has to like speak about it or
About it. Yeah.
have a conversation. That's kind of the certification going for. But the exam prep content was, I think, just repurposed from solutions architect associate exam and
Mm.
just pulls out the content, being like, oh, EC2 is on here, so let's pull out EC2. But then they give
Yeah.
you just way too much information that's not
Information.
necessary for the exam or for like that person who doesn't even know what a virtual server is.
Mhm.
And but they wouldn't explain really what the virtual server is or like the really fundamentals of what these things are. And not having much of like the infrastructure side experience because I was mostly
Yep.
on the support side. I was like, I've been in tech for 3-4 years now, and I've been working daily in IT, and I have like no idea what's going on or
Mhm.
what any of this means. And that's when I made awsnewbies.com, the study blog,
Yep.
to write out everything in the certification exam in my own words, because I
Nice.
think there's like studies done where when you take notes and then
Mhm.
synthesize it in your own words, that's how you kind of get yourself to like understand it better. So like teaching is the best way to learn.
Yes.
So I literally was doing that left to right, left to right, left to right, and I spent like a week making the website and studied it for a couple of days and took the certification exam, and I passed. So I was like, it's on AWS free tier, so I'll keep it up for a year until they start charging me for it, and I'll take it down. And if it helps like one or two people in that
Yeah.
year, great. And then turns out like after a couple months, I was getting like 10,000 hits a month from Google
Mhm.
because I didn't do any marketing. I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, it's there.
It's
I
all.
made
It
it
was
and I passed the
all
cert.
organic.
Yeah, and I passed the cert, so I had no need for it anymore. And that's kind of when I was like, wow, I think I might have hit a niche,
Mm.
like an
Yeah.
unserved niche where a lot of people, if I'm having these problems, because I'm pretty good at Googling, like that's how
Mhm.
I do my job. And for me to now have been able to find stuff that like directly served my needs probably
Mm.
means a lot of people are having the same problems. And I'm reading like Content Inc. right now,
Mhm.
and the author was literally just saying that they're like, what are some of like these like topic areas and like expertise that you can put together to find a niche that's not being served right now, and that's where you kind of go in
Comment.
and
Yeah.
own it. You like own that whole area. And I think that's what happened with me because I was just kind of in the right place at the right time.
Mm.
With the cloud practitioner cert being so new, there wasn't really anything that was filling that void
Yep.
of like the non-technical people needing to understand from zero
Mhm.
AWS. And after a few months of having that blog up, I got contacted by a content manager from LinkedIn Learning asking if I'd be interested in creating introductory AWS courses with LinkedIn Learning. And yeah, then the rest's like history.
Yep. Yep.
And now those courses have like almost 370,000 students. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
people need it.
That's
People loved it.
yes.
So
No, definitely. I love it. But yeah, talking about the LinkedIn Learning thing, I think you're pretty, and I love how you have put it, but I love that you're so transparent about, so I've read a few articles that you have wrote around, okay, this is how much I earned from LinkedIn Learning in 2021. This is how much, I think you said you projected, and then you have published the numbers that you made in 2020, 2021. And I don't know if 2022 was also in there, but like it's exciting to see, that, and I think that's what made you like not work in the corporate world, right?
so when I quit corporate, I actually wasn't making very much at all. I was making like
Yep.
500 a month.
Hmm.
But like my $0 to $14 an hour, $0 to like $500 a month was like pretty exciting. It's passive income after you create it.
Yeah.
And the thought that like no matter what you do, and I like because back then I was going to do technical writing
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
small companies and startups and stuff. So then that's like active work. So sometimes you get paid, sometimes they don't pay. Sometimes you don't have much going on, or sometimes you finish, but then they don't pay you until 2 months later or something like that. Just all kind of depends on like the billing cycle or how responsive they are. And so knowing that I had like that kind of baseline of anything coming in was pretty exciting.
Hmm.
And I don't know why I was like willing to do that because I'm a really risk averse person. I guess I
Hmm.
just really wanted to get out of corporate that badly. But I also got married then for health insurance because I'm like chronically ill, so I can't go without health insurance. So that's definitely like very helpful. This whole like W-2 and what do you call it, like content creating or small business
Yeah.
partnership is like really, I think it's like the best way to like increase your income and increase like
Mm.
what you are able to accomplish, but without too many of the risks because someone's earning an income, W 2
I see.
income, and they have benefits.
Hmm.
So we've kind of been operating like that where my income has been going up every year, but we have absolutely no idea what I'm going to earn every
Yeah.
year. And, but we're able to do this because I'm able to do this because we have my husband's W 2 income.
Hmm.
And I think like we both benefit from the way that this is set up, where my income is like there's no limit, and his income is there's a limit, but it's a very
I
like
see.
stable thing.
Hmm.
So I think I've been trying to be like really transparent about that part with my journey because I think there's a lot of like discourse, at least like a couple years ago before COVID, where someone like suddenly goes and then they're making $1 million a month,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
they're like, and you can do this too if you take the risks. And I'm like, no, like,
No.
no.
Yeah.
Have
There's a
plan
lot
A,
of
B, C, D, E, and F.
yeah.
F might be really shitty, but like just have it and then take that risk.
Hmm.
It's a calculated risk. And I think a lot of people like they might be living in their parents' condo,
Hmm.
or, they have health insurance from some weird thing, or they have a spouse who has benefits. And you can't just take risks like that, especially now. I think with COVID, I think a lot of people have realized you just can't take risks like that anymore.
Hmm.
But that's one of those things that I'm really trying to be transparent with my journey, is that I can only do this, and I was only able to quit my full-time job because even if I make what I make now, um I don't know if I still be comfortable with quitting my job because of the health insurance situation.
True.
So like the fact that I got married and then now I have health insurance through my spouse is like a really important part of this like content creation journey for me.
Yeah, no, totally. I think yeah, especially the COVID phase, I guess, because there was a rise in, people consuming content. You
Hmm.
saw a lot of, these fluffs around saying, hey, you can do it too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Start YouTube and then build a funnel to like launch your own niche course, and you
Yeah.
can
Yeah. Yeah.
be making $1 million.
Yeah.
And like,
Tomorrow.
yeah, that's not the case, and we can already see, like, with your approach, and I guess, this is the message that comes out through this podcast is, like, you were doing you studied something else, you found like a career in tech, and you realized, you didn't like it as much, so you found cloud, and you
Hmm.
realized that the content that's around the foundational and like the cloud practitioner certificate is not good enough for especially people who are early in career, also
Hmm.
are non-tech. And you found that niche, you started creating content, and it was not like in a month you were seeing,
20
100,000
million
students.
thousand.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and like there's a progression, and it could have gone, either way. Right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I've seen people fail too, but I think with your content, it has the value, and I think at the end it matters. Like, value matters the most. So if you're providing value, people love it, and that's why I think, you have more than 300,000 students that have enrolled into it. No, amazing, amazing. So how did that led to, your first published book, which we are seeing in the background now?
Yeah. So this published. Oh, so this published in last December. Oh,
Hmm.
can see it. Yep.
Yep.
So I published this with Manning, and this was another instance of editor emailing me asking if
Hmm.
I'd be interested in writing a book. And I think that just kind of really speaks to the importance of having this like really public
Yep.
portfolio and resume. Basically, my resume is online
Online.
24/7
Hmm.
around the globe, right? I'm not doing anything to like promote myself or show my resume to anyone. But because the content is there and people read the content, consume the content, they're like, oh, I kind of want this person to do jobs with us. And that's how I was getting my like technical writing clients
Hmm.
too, is because all my technical writing is public and free. Um, they're like, oh, we want this for ourselves. And I think it's like a really good case of having this like your resume is online at all times when you start
Hmm.
blogging or creating content, because it's like a very easy and good way for people to see you. Where
Yes.
otherwise, I think it was no one's gonna Google my name and find me
Hmm.
if I didn't have content up. I could be the best writer in the world and they still wouldn't find me. But because I just happen to be in this niche and my name is pretty well known in that niche, like
Hmm.
I was like contacted for all these different opportunities, and one of them in I think 2021, beginning of 2021 was would you be interested in writing a book? And actually, I had um, quit all my freelance jobs at the end of
Hmm.
2020 to focus 2021 on my health because I got rheumatoid arthritis when I was like 27.
Hmm.
And one of the big reasons why I moved out of New York City was the I was on like really high drug dosages and stuff, and my symptoms were like contained, but it's not good for your organs. It's like a diluted chemo drug, so long term usage. Like they say you can use it forever, but
Hmm.
you know, I was like, well, if I can get into remission, I'd like to get into remission. So I was like, okay, I'm expecting that I'll be on this for the rest of my life, but maybe there's like an alternative.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I moved back to the suburbs. Moved out to Maryland with my husband, and we did this like, a bit more nature. And I was doing a lot of freelance writing and stuff like that. But I was like, I'm going to devote 2021 to getting healthier. And so I had just quit all my
Yeah.
like recurring
Hmm.
clients, said, hey, I'll be back maybe in 2022. And then just then, like the book thing came in. And if I hadn't like gotten rid of all my engagements for 2021
Hmm.
back in end of 2020, there was no way I could have said yes to writing a book. So it's another one of those like right timing kind
Yeah.
of situation where I was only able to say, yeah, I'll do this because I didn't
You
have anything
decided
else
to
going
like
on.
cut off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
cut
yeah.
off everything. And so I was like, well, I don't know what's going to come out of this, and I'm not really expecting to make very much money out of it, but being a published author was a dream of
Yep.
mine since I was a kid.
Oh,
And
nice.
so yeah, I was going to be a writer. Um but writing there, like, it's like one of those dream jobs where you do on the side. So I was going to be a teacher, and then maybe if I ever manage to write
Hmm.
something, then that'll be great. That was like going to be my life plan or something. So I was not intending on writing about cloud computing, but you take what you can get. And so I spent the next year and a half writing this book. I finished this manuscript summer 2022, like a month before my son was born.
Mm.
So that was like a dramatic. I had that deadline. Like, I was like, I have to finish this
Yeah.
before my child is born because otherwise it is never going to get finished. I think I have never had a more stricter deadline than that deadline. Because before then, like, they give you deadlines, but it's kind of like really fuzzy,
Mm.
and you can
Hmm.
really like push it, and they expect you to push it, I think. Maybe they'll
I
get mad at
see.
me for saying this, but apparently I've like, from what I've read and what I've heard, it's like they set a deadline because they know authors will not meet it, and then
Uh,
they've built in a lot of buffer. And so it's been like fla 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 fla, and then I found out I'm pregnant, and I'm like, okay, this has to be done.
this has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like my portfolio is up there 24/7 around the world,
Hmm.
and it caught eyes of publisher, and a publisher was like, would you like to publish a book? And I think the title, so AWS for non-engineers, and my courses are introduction to AWS for non-engineers.
Hmm.
And that with LinkedIn Learning, it was like we were going back and forth about the title because I felt like saying just non-engineers is like kind of not gate, it's like reverse gatekeeping, right? Maybe engineers and IT professionals won't feel like it's for them, and they wouldn't want to
Mm.
take it.
Hmm.
And but it gets the nuance of what I'm trying to convey really quickly, right? It's like, hey,
Yes.
it's for people who you don't need any technical background.
Yes.
So in the end, because it's so straightforward, it went through.
Nice.
And so far, I've seen that a lot of engineers have taken it, and a lot of IT professionals have taken it. So
Hmm.
it seems like what I was afraid about wasn't really, it didn't come to fruition, which is great. But so the book is like very similar. So when you look it up, you get both on Google.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that was their intention, because
Definitely.
it
I
kind of
think it.
feeds off each other, and because my
Yeah.
name is there too, Google kind of thinks it's the same thing.
See. Hmm.
They just think my videos are the video version of my book,
Yeah.
which it kind of is. The book is just a lot more content in it and a lot more
Hmm.
updated. So it's kind of just been interesting learning about how these like branding works, and how your name also becomes a brand after a
Hmm.
while. And one of the things that I'm really like concerned about is like the reputation of my name and my
Mm.
brand. So like, I don't want to do anything that like tarnishes that, because reputation and trust is so hard to build up,
Yes.
but it's so easy to like destroy in half a
Hmm.
second. Like, we've seen that happen everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm always trying to like put out the best content that
Hmm.
I can put out, and the best quality, and not like cut corners, which also contributes to like a lot of stress and anxiety about like, should I really be doing any of this when I'm not an AWS like guru?
Mm.
And so it's been like a back and forth of that for years, but I think I've just kind of owned it now. I'm like, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
fine. People
No.
are fine with it.
Yeah. I don't have any issues. I think you're a great teacher, and yeah, coming back to that point, I think yeah, the course and the book, the naming, I think is really interesting because I think they work hand in hand because now people who buy books and they search for AWS for non-engineers,
Mhm.
they'll realize that oh, there's a course I can take along with the book. And then, it also works the other way around. When people who are taking courses, they can come and see, oh, there's a book that Hero published. It's the same person. We know her style of teaching. And yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I get that, you have like a reputation that you'll need to like, have hold of. But that being said, your name is Hero, and you're also an AWS Hero. Like, how did that happen? Like, because I think you have this feeling, or you had this feeling, that you're not an expert in AWS
Mm.
and you're no AWS guru, right? So, like, has that changed the mindset now, or like how did you become a hero?
Yeah, so AWS Hero, there's now that AWS Community Builder program,
Yes.
and but AWS Hero has like preceded that. It's been around, and the big one of the
Hmm.
big differences between AWS Hero program and AWS Community Builder program is you can't apply to become an AWS Hero.
Yes. Hmm.
You have to be kind of nominated internally, and then they go through the processes. And one of the things that I've been really thankful about ever since the beginning of since I started AWS newbies and stuff is like not the sponsorship, but the people within AWS have really been reaching out to me saying they really love my work and what I'm trying to do.
Hmm.
And so many people inside AWS have been so supportive of me and like the work I'm doing and the stuff I'm trying to do. And it would have been really easy for AWS to be like, you have AWS in your thing's name, shut it down, but they
I see.
didn't.
Hmm.
And they were actually like, I was kind of afraid that they're going to do that because my thing's name is like AWS newbies
Yeah.
and AWS is probably copyrighted or something. But instead, like, people from within AWS and like developer advocates and stuff like that,
Hmm.
they were all like really encouraging of what I was doing. And they invited me to like, heroes meetups and like community stuff. And I was able to attend reInvent um, one one year through a
Nice.
scholarship for people who don't have who are in the first 5 years of their tech career and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I would never have even like known those things existed if like one of the employees were like, hey,
Hmm.
I mentioned like I want to go to reInvent as a joke on Twitter, and someone DM me was like, hey, we can try to make this happen. Like, and I was like, what? And that was, I think, one of like the probably like a profound, like life
Hmm.
changing event of attending reInvent. You
Yes.
know, and back then I wasn't a hero. I wasn't like really anything except that I made this website and I made these
Hmm.
courses. But I met like so many people there. And it's really interesting because one of the people that I met there now works with my sister as like partnership with it. They both own nonprofits to help people get into tech and learn engineering and stuff like that. And they like
Nice.
work together and do stuff together. And it's kind of like, it was like a really exciting experience.
Hmm.
So
Definitely.
um, but I became an AWS hero, I think, end of 2020.
Hmm.
And I think it's just another like in the right place at the right time and seen by the right people situation. But I think people inside were always like, since I started, been advocating for me within AWS and like externally too. And that's how I was able to become an AWS hero because it goes through like you have to be seen first. You have to be seen, right?
Yeah.
And then people have to nominate you from inside, which means you really have to be seen because there's so many people creating
Hmm.
great content everywhere. And I think the fact that I was creating like content specifically for people who were previously not being served very well. Right now, there's a lot of content for
Yes.
complete beginners and stuff.
Hmm.
And even AWS themselves are creating a
Hmm.
lot of like games and content to help people with literally no tech experience get into AWS. But back in 2018, 2019, that wasn't the case.
No.
So I think I was in the right place at the right time again. But because I was like screaming on top of my lungs, this is something we need,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
this is not something you should ignore. I think that's why one of the big reasons why I was chosen to be an AWS hero, because generally it's the really, really experienced people with decades of experience, and they're
Mm.
doing like amazing things with the technical side of AWS. And I'm here just screaming about it with the beginner content. But I
Hmm.
think that 0 to 1 is actually really, really difficult. And I think it's just kind of an acknowledgement from AWS side too that this is a really important set of
Yeah.
people that we need to be really targeting to help them get in, because once you get the buy-in and they start understanding, they're going to buy it and they're going to use
Yeah.
it. And I feel like a lot of my content helps AWS do that. And
Hmm.
so I guess for them, it was a pretty like, and I'm working for free for them, right? So it's
True.
kind of like a win situation for them. And then I guess I get my pat. So it's like a win-win situation.
Yeah. No, that is awesome. Yeah, I think no, you have been a good, I think like community advocate and listening to the or experiences that you've had with yourself when you were learning AWS, and then you saw that there's such a gap that's available, and then amplifying that and bringing that in front of AWS. I think, yeah, you totally deserve to be an AWS hero. Nice. No, it was great to, you know, I know 1 hour is not enough to like cover the entire scope of the amazing career you've had. But I guess, people get like few tips, especially who are like in the similar boat, right? Or a similar situation as you, trying to get into tech or are trying to be, a content creator. I don't
Mhm.
know, tech influencer, course creators, are starting in AWS just like you. I think they definitely have some things and some tips from this podcast that they can work on. I have few questions that I just am curious to know. Are you a Windows or Mac or even a Linux person? Like, what do you use as your daily driver?
I use a Mac.
Interesting. And you have always been a Mac person, or
No.
okay?
So I was like, it's edgy to not be Apple person. So I was always like Windows until my last company. And then they gave me a Mac. So I
Hmm.
had to like learn how to use a Mac. And then I was like, oh, this is pretty nice. But
Yeah.
then I was like, I'm not an Apple person. I'm not going to be an Apple person. So I held out as long as possible from getting an iPhone. But last February, I finally did it. So now everything I own, and now I even have a
Yeah.
AirPod.
Is in the
I
Apple
tried. I
ecosystem.
tried. Yeah. So it's just like the ecosystem just ate me after a while. As
Hmm.
hard as I tried, I'm like, I love Google Pixel and the camera. I really like it a lot better than the iPhone camera, but
Hmm.
they kept on making it bigger and bigger and bigger, and
Yeah.
like my hands cannot hold it. And so I have a I have a
Nice. Yeah, you
Apple
gave
phone.
up.
I gave up. I gave up. And I
Yeah.
have an
I
Apple Watch too, so I gave up.
Nice. Yeah, it's hard to beat that ecosystem, I think.
Hmm.
So I'm a Windows, so like I have a Windows PC that I built, but I also have a Mac, because of the ecosystem. Because I
Mm-hmm.
have an iPhone, I have an iPad, I have Apple Watch,
Mm-hmm.
so it's
Yeah.
it's hard to beat that. They've done it really good, and I
Yeah.
hope
Yeah.
someday, you know, like Google or somebody else comes to that level of like ecosystem, and we can have that choice again. But
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite programming language whenever you try to build new things?
So I've only really used HTML and CSS, and then I'm sure
Hmm.
that's going to open a whole can of worms because people are like, HTML is not a programming language, but it makes things pretty and it makes things
Yes,
work, and that's all I use, and it's gotten me this far. So
as long as it works, like
it works,
that's yeah, that's
and
how
I've been doing that
corporations
since like
work.
2000, like 2000. Yeah, that's what I've been
Hmm.
doing, so it works.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It gives I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of comments below, but yes, I needed that. I needed a hot take. Okay, so you consider HTML to be a programming language?
Well, I mean, I don't really care. It works.
Yes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's all that matters to me.
Great. Okay, and I'll conclude the episode with any tip or advice you have for the listeners. Could be people early in career, could be people who are planning to start a career in tech, it could be people who are stuck with AWS. Any suggestions in general?
I guess one thing that's really helped me is learning in public. So I really encourage people to like create content around it, and just pick the medium that you like the best. It could be video, it could be audio, it could be a blog, it could just be tweets, and you be that person who tweets 4,000 letters. You do you. But I think like a lot of things that I hear from people when they message me, when they feel kind of stuck and they're not sure what to do and they do want to become like technical writer or something, they want to know how to do it. They're like, dude, everything's been talked about already and everyone's written about it. And I don't know what I should write about because like everything's been written about already. And I was like, well, there's a lot of stuff floating around in the internet and you have some technical problem or technical question and you Google it. And it's very rare that that first link gives you the answer that you want. And you're
Hmm.
probably going through, a couple of links. You probably have like 5 tabs open from the same query, trying to find that one that like really clicks with you and goes like, aha. And I was like, you could be that aha for someone and you could be on page 10. It doesn't matter if they get there. And if your thing gives enough ahas to people, your thing is going to be on page 1. And given that like I literally created this whole thing from nothing just because I was really confused, like obviously AWS has been talked about until
Yes.
it's dead. It's like everyone's like beating on it with all the content that's been created. But somehow, like, because I went in from this direction of, hey, like, I have
Hmm.
absolutely no idea what's going on. So I'm going to talk about this. Like, I'm like, this is a refrigerator, or this is like your Wi Fi network. This is like
Hmm.
your dog barking, like that kind of way that I was talking about it really like resonated with people. And everyone and their mother's talking about Amazon S3, but clearly the way that I wrote about it gave those people the aha moment. And it doesn't matter that there's probably a million documents about
Hmm.
S3. If that gave some if my explanation of S3 finally clicked for someone. So like you can be that someone and that your blog can be that something, your YouTube video can be that something for that person. And that's all it takes. Like I feel like just because it's been written about forever doesn't mean you can't put your own spin to it. You can't like slice it in your own words that helps someone. And I feel like just being able to help someone else and yourself with what you're learning and what you're confused about. If you're confused about it, other people are confused about it. So, I feel like that really shouldn't stop you from writing about blah again because it's been
Yeah.
written about 5,000 times already.
No, that is a great tip. Yeah, I think, and especially with tech changing so fast,
Mm,
error messages and issues that you might be facing 2 years ago, they go obsolete if you have
mhm,
written a blog post about it. I often go back and have to update my blog post because they were obsolete and people were not facing it anymore, and there was
mm.
some different error message that you are getting now. So yeah, just if you face any problem or if you're passionate, like you find something interesting, just write about it. I had like I remember the first blog post that I posted it had like as soon as I posted it, I posted about it on Twitter that this is my first blog post, and like 10 people opened the link, and I could see that right
Mhm,
because there's
mhm.
this views, and I'm like, this is awesome. And then someone commented, oh, I was facing the same issue, like later down the road, and someone commented, I was facing the same issue, and it helped me, because your blog post mentioned it,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I helped one person, like this is game change, like that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
it was like I was so happy like someone was helped
yeah,
because I wrote about it. So
yeah,
yeah, I think that was a great tip. And yeah, it was great having you, Hero. I really appreciate your time. And I hope, as I said earlier, people get something valuable out of this episode. There were some great tips and suggestions throughout your journey, right? And all the learning curves and battles you have fought to where you are today. It's just commendable, and I congratulate you on the birth of your son, and also all the success with your new book. So yeah.
yeah. Thank you, and thanks for having me on. It's like a huge circle we've made in the,
Hmm.
I guess, like 3 years. I think
Yep.
it was like literally like 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna end this, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.